to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot see.
Hi, welcome along to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith, and welcome to Ross Gregory. How are you, Ross?
I'm good, thanks, Steve. Yeah, not too bad. Decent weekend. 3 points as well for Eddie Howe's boys. 3 points for Wickham as well. So can't complain with the weekend as it went.
Yeah, good stuff, mate. Brilliant stuff. And a hard-earned 3 points for Newcastle. We knew it would be a tough game against Fulham. And Isaac getting his third goal in 4 games after his injury comeback, which was fantastic. Who stood out for you in the game at the weekend?
So I thought it was a funny performance. I thought the team played okay, did all right, created a couple of kind of half chances. I was quite impressed with Fulham, to be honest. I thought they'd be decent. I thought they'd pose a problem or two. We were a bit better organised and better disciplined than what I expected. And some of the play that they on the break I thought was pretty decent. The turning point, I mean, in terms of who played well, I was really impressed with Sean Longstaff. I thought he stood up when Bruno went off and got injured. I thought he kind of took on that extra responsibility in the midfield. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, and I 100% understand why, but the job that he's done since he came in this season, the improvement that he's shown under Eddie Howe, and like I say, that responsibility that he took on Sunday was excellent. He's a real asset to the club, and yeah, he really impressed me. Others that I thought did okay. I thought Maxi looked relatively sharp when he came on. He had a couple of good moments. Obviously, the defense is really solid still, and competitive and give it that foundation, that base for the other teams for the rest of the team to go on and play. But it was just a good solid performance without anyone massively standing out other than for me, Sean Longstaff.
Yeah, I've got to be honest. It was between Fabian Shaw, Joe Linton, and Sean Longstaff for me yesterday. I think the three of them really, put a great shift in, as they always do. But again, a good team performance, and Isaac capping, his latest comeback with another goal, which was fantastic. Of course, the return of Mitrovic was anticipated. I mean, he hasn't had the best of luck against Newcastle in the 4 games he played prior to yesterday. Or Saturday, and ultimately he got a penalty. Now let's look at the penalty first. I mean, it took an age, didn't it, for them to work it out on VAR. I mean, when you look at it, I think it was fairly cut and dry at the end of the day. I'm not sure what you felt about the penalty, but I've seen them given, I've seen them not given. But it was the length of time it took. I mean, we've moved into a different pattern of play at the other end of the pitch before, VAR checked the penalty and came back. What was your take on the penalty?
I didn't think it was a penalty, Steve. I didn't. And it'd be one of those where I'll try to look at decisions like that and think, if the shoe was on the other foot, how would you feel about it? That's how I try to be as balanced as I can with these things. You could argue that it was told by Dan Burn, wasn't it? In the kind of passage of play before then was probably more of an issue for me. I thought the actual award, yes, I think Trippier does catch Decadora, but I think he's the Fulham player stands on Trippier first and kind of instigates that contact, if you like. So I didn't think it was a penalty. And again, what is the point of VAR? The point of VAR, my understanding, is that for clear and obvious errors, and that wasn't a clear and obvious error for me. It was the penalty wasn't given. It wasn't clear and obvious that there was a foul. For me, it could have gone either way. It went Fulham's way, and look, that's sometimes the way it goes. If Newcastle got that decision, I would have been happy. If they should have been on the other foot, and Newcastle had been given a penalty awarded for that. then I would have been happy, but I would have thought it was probably a little bit 6 and 2 frees as well. It wasn't a clear and obvious error for me, and that for me is what VAR should be brought in to do, or was brought into doing, and should be doing. The other element of it is around the penalty is in around VAR is just the lack of communication and clarity for fans in the stadium. You know, there's such a long time to give these decisions, and fans being left in the dark. I don't really know what the answer is. I don't know if it's making up the ref to the VAR studio or something like that, so you can hear it. Or I'm not sure what the answer is, but it's not a great experience for fans. It's not a great look, I don't think, for the Premier League when these decisions are taking so long. People you're paying customers, the people who matter, are being left completely in the dark about it.
Yeah, Mitrovic, of course, stepped up to take the penalty. Have you ever seen a stranger penalty?
Yeah, it was as soon as it went in. If you see Nick Pope just knew as soon as it went in, he's straight up. I think before the ball even hit the back of the net, he's up, he's running at the ref, so it's a double touch. There was I think there was one, wasn't it, in one of the, was it Middlesbrough's League Cup final against, I can't remember who it was against. Was it against Leicester or no, Blackburn, I think it was, and Bolo Zenden did the same and took the penalty and hit it off his standing foot, and it went in, and that was given when it probably shouldn't have been. So by the laws of the land, by the rules of football, you know, it was the right decision to rule Mitrovic's out. But just, you know, the bloke had no luck, did he? You know, he must have thought, this is it. Steps up, slips, bangs it off his other foot, loops in, and he still doesn't get it. Well, he was off and away celebrating, but Nick Pope knew, and the ref gave it straight away as well. So crazy. And sometimes you need that little bit of luck in games. You know, Newcastle have had a touch of luck in some games, and they certainly got a good dollop of it there. But you know, it swings and roundabouts. Sometimes these will go free, and sometimes they won't.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I've forgotten about that penalty for Middlesbrough. But yeah, you're right, mate. That is that's a good shout, a good comparison. But yeah, I knew it had happened before. I just couldn't remember where or when. But again, Mitrovic not carrying the luck against Newcastle United, and thankfully Newcastle went up to the other end, you know, and grabbed the goal. I guess the biggest talking point, and you know, we're all carefully holding our breath at the moment, is the injury to this man, Bruno, who you know, came back onto the sidelines and was distressed, you know, tears coming from his eyes. Eddie Howe, of course, coming out last night and saying that you know, the player at this moment in time feels it's a bad one, but you know, it's never good when a player, you know, reacts like that. And you know, we're just gonna have to wait and see. He's obviously got a scan, not sure when that's booked in. You would imagine he's in today. Not really seeing any news lines on it about it so far, but it's a big blow if we lose him, you know, for any games. But you know, hopefully it's not too bad an injury.
Yeah, I mean, it was so innocuous as well. You know, he's obviously gone to close down the Fulham defence, and he's just rolled it. He's just rocked it on that ankle, and you know, it goes down, and you can see in the slow mos when you watch it back on TV, you can see it rocking, and you know, anybody who's gone over on their ankles, you know, knows how painful it can be. Whether you're just out walking and trip over on the pavement, or whether you're playing football or some other sports, you know, when you rock that ankle, it can look so innocuous, but you know, by God, you can of course get a bit of pain from it. So it was a blow. It was heartbreaking for him, seeing him come off like that. He's obviously quite an emotional character, and you can imagine as well when you get that kind of injury, you're thinking, it goes through your mind, how long am I going to be out for? Am I going to miss this game? Am I going to miss that game? Could it be my season? All that sort of things go through your mind. He left St James's Park on crutches and with a kind of protective boot around it. We hope that's a little bit just kind of looking after him, and you know, it's commonplace for players when they have them types of injuries to take the weight off it straight away with the crutches and the protective boot. He'll get his scan. He'll get that. The results will come back, and hopefully it's something relatively minor. Maybe it's just a twist or a bit of ligament damage in a few weeks. Hopefully it's nothing more serious than that, because he's a massive player for Newcastle. You saw just it's not just his overall contribution on the pitch in games. Sometimes it's just little moments, little fleeting moments. That pass that he put through in the first 5 or 10 minutes for Sean Longstaff in the first half, that little reverse ball, just bits of quality like that nobody else really on that pitch would have played that pass in a black and white shirt anyhow. Nobody really else has that vision or ability to pick a pass like that. He's such an important integral player for Newcastle. Hopefully he's back on the pitch very, very soon.
I mean, it's a blessing in one way that we've managed to get Isak back at this time. If Bruno is going to be out, and I mean, again, we're pre-recording this show, so the information may well have come out by now. But we've got personnel, we've got people who we can move in. What do you think Eddie Howe will do in the forthcoming games? If he is going to be missing Bruno for a while, what do you think he'll do? I mean, you have got options. With Joe Linton, for example. I mean, he dropped into midfield. He can go into a wide left role. You've got Isak, of course, who can play as a front man, but can play in a midfield role. You've already mentioned earlier on today as well, Sean Longstaff. We've got Joe Willock. We've got Elliot Anderson in the wings, who hasn't really had much of a chance to showcase his talents in the Premier League. So there are options, aren't there?
There are options, but they're limited now. I think they're very, very limited, especially. So Joe Shelby's injury is going to keep him out for a good period of time still. He's not going to be back within the next few weeks, certainly not. Might be a bit longer. And then if Bruno's out for a similar period of time or a more considerable amount of time, then it does leave Newcastle really short in that central midfield area. For me, I think you've got players who can fit in there and do a role in there. The lads that you've mentioned there, and Eddie Howe likes to go with a 3-man midfield with one player at the base, and then one to the left and one to the right. And at the base, it's generally been obviously Bruno. Shelby can do that when he's fit and available. We had a spell at the start of the season when neither players were fit, and Sean Longstaff did that role for a handful of games. And I think that is going to have to be the short-term option for Eddie Howe is to play Sean Longstaff in that kind of holding role in front of the back four, and then have Joe Willock to one side, Joe Linton to the other. You've got, like you say, Elliot Anderson, but Elliot Anderson's got a minor injury at the minute. He's been suffering with a thigh injury, I think it is, thigh or calf. I'm sure it's a thigh injury. I'll have to double check, but Elliot Anderson's, he's not fully fit as well. So you're almost down to 3 kind of fully fit central midfielders. There's other players who can drop in there and do a job. Somebody like Fabian Schär can play a holding midfield role, but you wouldn't want to take him out of the back four. Certainly not the way he's been playing, and the way that the back four as a unit's been playing. You've also got players like Matt Ritchie can maybe drop into a central midfield role if he stays with the club. There's a lot of wide players there. You could possibly get one, going into a midfield 3 and becoming almost like an attacking midfielder or a 10. But with Bruno out, with Shelby out, with Elliot Anderson having that little injury issue as well, you're really down to 3 central midfield players who are comfortable in that position. I think it leaves Newcastle very, very stretched, and I think it changes if they weren't already looking to bring a central midfielder into the club in this transfer window, and I think that they were anyhow. But this just really crystallises it for me, the need, the importance to bring in somebody who can add some depth, add some quality, add some competition for that place, and some cover while Bruno and Shelby are both out.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Eddie Howe had to make a big call yesterday in selecting Big Joe Linton. I mean, off the pitch, we know that there's an issue. We've made the line on this program really that we're not going to discuss it in depth because we don't know anything. We don't really know what's gone on. But look, it was a big call by Eddie Howe. And I think I got the gist of it really at the press conference on Friday, listen back to it on NUFC's YouTube channel, was that there would be meetings, there would be conversations, but ultimately he would pick the team. It's his job to pick the team to win games for Newcastle United, and he certainly did just that.
He did. I mean, it's a real interesting dilemma, isn't it? It's a tricky one for Eddie Howe. It's I think Eddie Howe, he wants his players to play in a certain way, but he also wants them to be professional in certain ways and have their standards in a certain way as well. So I don't think this would have been a easy decision for Eddie Howe to make. But what's happened, what's gone on with Joe Linton, you're right, Steve. It'll come out in the wash. It'll come out in future weeks. When he has his court appearances or whatever else happens. It would have been a real dilemma for Eddie Howe. He's made the decision. There's been internal conversations and internal measures taken. He's thought that draws a line under it for now, and Eddie made the decision that Joe Linton was still available for selection on Sunday. And I think, look, would I have done the same thing? I don't know, because I'm not in full, I don't have in full receipt of all the facts. I don't know exactly what it was and what the conversations have gone on behind the scenes. But you've got to put your trust in Eddie Howe. He's a good man. He's a good manager. He's got the best interests of obviously the club, but also the welfare of the players at heart as well. So he's paid to make big decisions, and he made his in that way on Sunday. Whether you agree with it or not, it's his decisions to make, and he'll continue. That's what he's employed for, and that's what he'll continue to do.
Yeah, 100%, mate. But it's one of those situations which managers have to deal with from time to time. So for me, well done, Eddie Howe. You got the 3 points, and for me that was what was required. Almiron was really on a high before the World Cup, mate, and ultimately he's still playing very well, not getting the goals as he was, but I've noticed a pattern in the last couple of games. People are doubling up on him. People trying to suss him out, trying to stop him play, which ultimately leaves space for other players. But what have you made of Almiron in the last couple of games since the World Cup?
Yeah, I mean, he was flying, wasn't he, before the World Cup? Absolutely flying. And then first game back after the World Cup, within 6-7 minutes, Newcastle are 2-0 up against Leicester. He's got one of the goals, and it's a brilliant goal, fantastic finish, great move. And you think, right, wow, he's just going to continue this goal scoring form that he showed prior to the World Cup. If we're all honest with each other, if we're all brutally honest, nobody foresaw Miggy Almiron's run of form where he's scoring goal after goal after goal, and not just scoring goals, but the standard and the quality of those goals as well. Nobody saw that coming. Fantastic, for the player himself. All credit to him and to Eddie Howe for the way that they've performed. But I didn't see that coming, and I didn't see that he would be able to maintain those standards. Maintaining those levels would be it'd be messy levels if he was continued that over a long. It was a great run of form, but form is sometimes comes, sometimes goes. I agree with you, Steve. I don't think he's playing poorly at the minute. He's just not getting the run of the ball. He's not getting in those positions, and he's not going to start bending. He's not every shot that he takes from 25 yards isn't going to bend into the top corner. Opposition, you have to give the opposition teams some credit. They're going to come and try to stifle Newcastle, and they know that Almiron is one of the key attacking threats for Newcastle. He's top scorer. He's been fantastic. So yeah, they will double up. They'll look at some of the patterns of play that Newcastle put in. The little balls where Almiron will give it into Bruno and go and get a return or something like that. He's the runs that he makes, and they'll try to put steps in play in the preparations to play Newcastle where they can stop those little pockets and those little patterns of play. So it doesn't surprise us that that he's not hit those levels before that he did before Christmas. And equally, it's like you say, Steve, it's freeing up a little bit of room for other players as well. Sean Longstaff's had 2 or 3 really, really good opportunities recently, and I think some of that's because of teams doubling up on Almiron and Trippier and not maybe paying as much attention to Sean Longstaff as an attacking threat. Now Longstaff's not being able to finish those chances off, and if he did, he'd be elevating himself onto another level himself, and that could be an area for Sean Longstaff to improve. But if teams are picking up and doubling up on Miggy Almiron, then it will create space for other players, and Newcastle just then got to try and capitalise on that.
Yeah, I agree, mate. He's got, he's still got a bit between his teeth. I mean, the ground him and Sean Longstaff covered yesterday was immense. The heat maps are bizarre, but I'm sure that he will go, the full season putting in those kind of performances, and hopefully we will reap the benefits as a team. Got to talk about this. This is just the latest in a long line of flags that War Flags have put up, of course, self-funded by supporters, and the statement underneath there: we're not here to be popular, we're here to compete, which is what Eddie Howe has said on more than one occasion at press conferences. But Eddie Howe liked that yesterday. He said it was a nice surprise, but great effort, isn't it, by War Flags when you think about where this came from and how it's developed over the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, it's great to see every display that they plan, or every new flag, or they're not missing a beat at the minute. Everything is really on point, and it's helped to generate an even better atmosphere. I think at St James's Park, it's brought fans together. It's brought the fans in the club and the players and the staff a little bit closer as well. It's everybody singing off the same hymn sheet. You can't. I don't think you can give them too much, more credit than what they need. It's absolutely fantastic what they've done, and what they continue to do. I think as well, the fact that it is self-funded. It's not something that they're in, necessarily in bed with the club with. The club will support what War Flags are doing, obviously, and backing them. But yeah, I think it's really important. There's a lot of people who don't like kind of forced atmospheres, if you like, or forced ways of supporting your club. We've seen that before with clapping on the seats and clappers at different grounds and this, that, and the other. But this just feels more organic. It feels really connected in with the fan base, really connected in with the team and the support, and bringing everybody in on the same ride. And it's I think it's fantastic. I look forward to it every home game.
Yeah, it's fantastic. As you see, it's with it being funded by supporters. Supporters feel, naturally they feel part of it, and I think it's great as well the way the new owners have taken to it as well.
Yeah, that's the key to it, is that it's done by the supporter, for the supporters, by the supporters. It's not done by. It's not a PR machine. It's not done as part of anything else like that. Yes, the owners are on board with it, and the support, the backing it, and the encouraging it, because it creates a great atmosphere. It creates a great link across the whole club, and it's something really, really positive for the club. But I think for me, it's really important that it stays independent. It stays as an independent part of the fan base. It's not something that is funded by the owners, by the club itself. That it is something that is run by the fans, by the supporters, and funded by them. That for me is really important. But the fact that everybody is bought into it, owners, players, staff, club officials, who have been fantastic in terms of the support that they've given War Flags, in terms of giving them the access to plan and prepare all this, and then the supporters as well. It's long may it continue, because it's been a real shining light for Newcastle fans.
Now, yesterday we did see yesterday on Sunday, pre-record, I keep forgetting, but yeah, we had Wilson and Isak on the pitch at the same time. This is something we've talked about on this show. Could we see a partnership development between the two players? And ultimately, it was Callum Wilson's ball across for Isak to nod in to get the winner against Fulham. which led to us getting the 3 points. So, like, not a massive amount of time on the pitch together yesterday, but we saw Eddie Howe having to adapt, obviously, due to the injuries and the fact that he'd made these substitutions, and he went from a favoured 4-3-3 formation to a 4-2-3-1. So is this something you think we might see more of in the future? I mean, obviously it depends on both players being fit, of course. And is it something you'd like to see, Ross?
I would like to see it. I'd love to see them both on the pitch at some point together, whether it's from the start or in certain games where they might need to push a little bit harder, to go a bit more on the attack, to try something a little bit different, to break down a defence. Newcastle were within a couple of minutes of having a kind of another, third consecutive goalless draw in the league, which would have been a real kind of it would have been a bit of a blow, I think. So Eddie Howe gambled on it. He went, look, let's change the system around here. Let's keep the 4 at the back, but have your 2 holding midfielders or your 2 central midfielders in Joe Linton and Sean Longstaff, and then get the width on with Maxi and with Almiron, and then after he came off with Jacob Murphy and pushing Isak more centrally, really. For me, he played more like a 10. He didn't really play right as up that top end. He played just behind Callum Wilson. And if you speak to people who've watched him in his career before, he's a very versatile forward. He can play as a 9 and on the back man, but he can also drop into the pockets and play as a 10. He can play out wide as well. He's got a few strings to his bow, Isak. I think he prefers, obviously, as being that central striker and being able to roam and pull out wide and pull into the channels. But he did really well, I thought, in the latter stages against Fulham. Obviously popped up with the goal, knew where just that little bit of movement in and around the box, and got himself into that position where it was a 3-yard tap. I think even you would have scored that, Steve. Well, maybe not. Maybe I'm over-egging it a little bit there, but it was his positional play, got himself into a great area where he knew where the ball was going to come. If he hadn't been on that pitch, would anybody else have got into that position when Callum Wilson had nudged that ball back across? Would there have been anybody else there? I don't think there would have been. That's the benefit sometimes of having those 2 up front, two goal threats, 2 strikers. I don't think it'll work in every game. I think it'll have to be match specific, or even certain pockets in games. But it was great to see that yesterday, where the game was tight, they needed that little bit of inspiration, and you look at the bench and you can bring on Alan St-Maximin, you can bring on a £60 million striker in Alexander Isak. There was options there to change the game, which Newcastle haven't had all the time this season. They've been very reliant on a good 11-12 and getting the results with those. But that bench was really, really strong yesterday. It was great to see.
Yeah, it definitely was. Okay, we're going to have the ad break as we are halfway through the show. So we will be back after this. A big thank you to all our sponsors, as always. Thanks to Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, and our website skipsandbins.com. Easy contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks to Garden of Healing Dispensaries, CBD hemp and cannabinoid specialists. You can find them at thegohd.com. Thanks to Mr. Vicky's sauces, which are handmade in Cumbria. And you can find them at mrvickys.co.uk. If you want to make an order, give them a call on 01768 210 102 or email info@mrvickys.co.uk. Thanks to Blowhole Breweries. You can get a selection of beers, and the cans are in the design of the old Newcastle United entertainers strips. Blowholebrewery.co.uk. Thanks to Melly's Carpets and Beds, laying our reputation, one recommendation at a time. The best quality around at the cheapest prices. Melly's Beds and Carpets.co.uk. Email sales@mellysbedsandcarpets.co.uk or give Melly a call on 01670 632 216. And thanks to United Group Travel Limited, UK coach holidays in Morpeth, 01670 362 460 or mobile 07957 141 654. Graham, your driver, Beverly answering your calls and looking after you on your tour. Some great deals coming up there. Get yourself onto the website to check them out. Thanks also to Media Arts, who do all of our videos and help us with the technological side of things. And thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle, and the guys who run our website, NUFCmatters.com. If you want to subscribe to the channel, then hit the subscribe button below. Hit the thumb up, which is the like button, which does us a big favour with the algorithm. And click share. Share it to Newcastle United, Facebook groups or Twitter accounts or your own social media to help our community grow. And if you want to join the channel, hit the join button. And for as little as $1.99 a month, you can get some members-only videos and chances to win some fantastic prizes. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, and the rest. Don't forget as well that we do events through NUFC Matters. And this one is the next event coming up, Friday the 24th of February, an evening with Newcastle United legend Steve Howie. Friday the 24th of February, Tyneside Irish Centre, and tickets are available at £50 from newcastlelegends.com. If you also go onto Voucher and search for the event, you can pick up a bargain on there. Don't forget, we also support the food bank on this channel. www.nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk is where you can find the Matchday Bucket. You can make a virtual donation to the Matchday Bucket 365 days of the year to keep helping the food bank in Newcastle. Okay, the Evening Chronicle, been running a story this week. Matty Hewitt, I think it was on the online pages, about Joe Shelby, suggesting that there's been an approach for the midfielder from Besiktas. They're looking to offer the figure of between 2.5 and 3.5 million euros. Of course, Shelby's contract expires at St James's Park in the summer. This report comes from Photomac, it appears, but you would imagine with injury to Bruno, and obviously at the time of recording this, we're not sure what that is. It's probably not a time to let Joe go, and currently he's injured himself.
Yeah, exactly. They can have all the interest they want, but the player's injured. He's not going to be back before the end of the transfer window. That's for certain. He's probably going to be, potentially, late February, maybe early March. So, and with Bruno's injury, I just don't see that one as being something that would progress. Shelby will have a lot of interest in him because he's a player who's out of contract in the summer unless he triggers his new contract with playing a couple more games for Newcastle. And he's a talented footballer on his day. He's well capable of playing at a very, very high level. But yeah, with his injury, with Bruno's injury, with Newcastle's midfield options at the minute, I certainly don't see him leaving this month.
I think that's highly unlikely, to be honest. And I think, from our perspective, it would be rather foolish, especially if, Bruno is going to be out a little bit longer than, maybe he was first feared. One man who does look as if he's going to head towards the exit door in this particular window, though, is Ryan Fraser. Not included in squads and not selected, and it doesn't bode well for the Scottish player. I think he could be on his way out.
Yeah, I agree with you, Steve. I think we spoke about it last week or previous weeks. He's slipped so far down the pecking order now. If you're looking at the wide players, if you're looking at those attacking players that Newcastle have now, he's behind Miggy Almiron, he's behind Alan St Maximum, he's probably behind Matt Ritchie, he's behind Jacob Murphy, he's behind Alexander Isak, even Elliot Anderson, and play as one of the wide players, probably ahead of him. So I don't see there being any future there for him. I believe he'd be free to leave and secure a move this month. Newcastle are going to have to trim the squad a little bit because of they can only name 25 in that squad, and if they're looking to bring in one or two players this month, which I think they will, then they're going to have to there's going to be players who miss out on that squad. So I fully expect Ryan Fraser to move this month.
Do you think one of the goalkeeper situations will be resolved this month as well? I mean, Newcastle at the moment have Nick Pope, who's clearly first choice. They've got Carl Darlow, they've got Gillespie, obviously got Carrier still on loan. You would imagine that one of those is, going to be surplus to requirements at the very least.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, obviously, Nick Pope is the number one, clear number one. Who is then the number two? Is it Carl Darlow or Martin Dubravka? For me, it's. Well, I think the decision will have already been made, in the sense that my understanding is Dubravka can't play for another club this season now. He's played for Man United. He's played for Newcastle in the FA Cup. So once you've played two competitive games for two different clubs in a season, FIFA rules say that you can't play for a third club. You can move to a third club, but you can't play for them. So I think that makes the decision, for Eddie Howe, for the club. Dubravka can't go anywhere, or he can go somewhere, but he's not going to play. So why not just keep him as number two? And then that would mean, for me, either Carl Darlow will go out on loan somewhere, or move to a new club this month. Karius, will he get his contract, renewed? Do you need Pope, Dubravka, Karius, and Gillespie? I don't know if you do. So I would expect Darlow to probably leave this month. Maybe he's on loan or permanently, and I'm not sure Karius will get his contract renewed as well.
Yeah, I would agree on that, certainly. Interesting debate yesterday on the coverage of the game against Fulham, and it was Merson and Louis Saha, of course, a former Newcastle player, who were arguing over what would be success and what Newcastle should chase down in this final the second half of the season. And Newcastle, of course, we haven't spoken about it yet, but got to the semi-final of the Carabao Cup with a convincing and great performance against Leicester City, 2-0. They were discussing whether Newcastle should concentrate on winning the Carabao Cup or chasing down the Champions League place. Merson said it's a cup for him, and Sahar said I would go Champions League straight away. What's your take? I know we've discussed similar things to this on the show before, but now it's becoming more of a reality. Has your opinion changed, Ross? Because I think for me, cups. Cup first and foremost. I mean, I still feel we could do both if we have a bit of luck with injuries and suspensions. But yeah, cup for me first.
Cup for me, 100% first. Yeah, look, I'm fortunate enough, and not all Newcastle fans are, but I'm fortunate enough to have seen Newcastle play in the Champions League, and one of those heady days of the late 90s, early 2000s when Kevin Keegan, Kenny Dalglish, Bobby Robson, the teams that Newcastle had in those days competing in Europe. Great nights, great to see some of the big European giants come to St James's Park, and we all hope that those are around the corner as well. And I certainly would love to see those nights again at St James's. But I've never seen Newcastle win a trophy. I've never seen them win a cup. And that's, once you get that first one as well, I think it could hopefully give the team and the club that little bit of confidence, that little bit of belief that actually we are a force now. We are cup winners. We've got over the line. We've won that first one. The day out, the weekend out at Wembley would be fantastic. I know some people have already obviously booking their trains, booking their hotels, just on the safe side, just in case they all get fully booked in Newcastle if Newcastle do get there. It's a tricky semi-final to overcome against Southampton. I think it's possibly it is a kind draw. Let's be honest about it. If you had to choose one of the three remaining teams with Newcastle in there, I think you'd probably have chosen Southampton. Newcastle haven't got a bad record against Southampton recently as well. So, but it'll still be a tough tie. Southampton showed that against Man City that they're more than capable of producing good performances in the cup. But yeah, I'd love to win a cup. I'd love to see Newcastle win a bit of silverware. That's all. That should be for me. I don't even see how it's a debate. I really don't even see how it's an argument. It what do we play football for? Football to win competitions, to win silverware, to win trophies. Let's target that. I think they can do both. I'm same as you, Steve. I think there's only 3 games now potentially left in the Carabao Cup. 2-legged semi-final and then hopefully a final as well. So it's not exactly extra strain, extra pressure or anything else like that, other than if 1 or 2 injuries are picked up, but which obviously that they have done in Bruno's case. But yeah, let's just go all out, play your strongest team, and I'm sure Eddie Howe will, strongest teams in those 2 cup semi-finals, hopefully get to the final, and then a one-off game at Wembley. Anything can happen.
Yeah, of course it can. The Chronicle run the story as well, linked to the Daily Telegraph, to say that Newcastle could secure a new deal with Adidas to produce future kits. Representatives from Adidas watched the EFL Cup quarter-final win over Leicester, and they said that Adidas made the kit during the Kevin Keegan era, when they were last in the hunt for the Premier League title, and when Alan Shearer set the new record as the competition's highest scorer. We do get a bit sentimental over strips, don't we, Ross? We've all got our favourites. We did a show on it recently, actually, me and the lads. And yeah, Adidas, I think, is something that Newcastle fans would probably like to see back.
Oh yeah, love to see it. Love to see a little bit of nostalgia. Always goes a long way. It harks back to those kind of exciting times, those glory days playing in Europe, challenging at the top end, challenging for trophies, and it's also a sign that if Newcastle can get a link up with or partnership with someone like Adidas, someone of their size, it's going to bring in more revenue. It's going to be a more lucrative commercial deal for them as well. It just shows the steps that the club are making, and the way that the club is being run now, that we're talking about these big deals. But yeah, I think everyone would like to see a return of Adidas as the kit provider, and some of those maybe a hark back to some of those old kits. Which was your favourite, Steve?
I've got to be honest, I loved the old 83-84 strip. It was my first season as well. I love the black and white, and I love the grey one. I mean, those were the 2 that I picked out. I mean, I love the Grandad collar shirt, of course I did. But, if I had to pick my 2 favourite ones, it was the Blue Star black and white, which Keegan and Beardsley and Waddle wore, and the grey away strip with the old NUFC badge on. Those were my favourites. What about you?
Yeah, I love the old NUFC badge. I mean, the badge and the crest's a conversation probably for another day. We would probably spend another half an hour talking about the badge and the crests. But yeah, I love the old NUFC one. Again, similar to you, Grandad collar. I quite like the old. Can you remember the old kind of opal fruit one, the green and yellow? Was it Greenhalghs, when Greenhalghs were the sponsor?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
I've got to like I like that one. That one sticks in my mind as well as an away kit. But yeah, I think it would be great to get Adidas back as a kit supplier, and some new designs, and hark back to some of the good old days.
I also picked them on the Chronicle this week. Newcastle United are looking to bulk up their academy after years of neglect. Eddie Howe and Newcastle United believed to be trying to sign a number of youth prospects in order to bulk up their academy, which has been neglected for years. One name in particular, which had been picked out by Keith Downey on Sky, was Rory McLeod, the 16-year-old Dundee United midfielder who has been on the radar of many other Premier League teams. So, I mean, it's good news that. I'm wondering whether they're going to make some inroads in linking up with some of the boys' clubs, because you and I know, having been involved in non-league level in the Northeast over the years, that, there's some fantastic clubs. I mean, we all know the story of Wallsend Boys Club and Redheath Boys, to name but 2. But linking up with the boys' clubs, it must be on the agenda at some point, one would imagine.
You would think so. You would hope so. The Newcastle have over the years have traditionally had a good production line, players coming from the Northeast, but in recent years, it's that link between the academies and the boys' clubs is dried up a little bit, and we haven't always seen the best young players, best young prospects actually stay within the region. Some of them have had to go elsewhere to get that football, to play for to get their opportunities, and that's a shame, because you want to have those big link ups with and keep the best local talent within the Northeast. and certainly for Newcastle, you know, there's still, for all the progress and everything else that are made in the riches of the Premier League and everything else like that, whether people are like it or not, but Sunderland is still seen as a better academy than Newcastle, or has been traditionally over the years, and is a better place for young players to develop, and you know, some of the success that they've had there, whereas Newcastle just haven't quite nailed their academy work yet. Now, one thing I will say is that Dan Ashworth is really keen on that youth side, the youth setup, the academy structure, and making sure that there's the best coach and the best scouting, the best facilities and everything else like that. It takes a real keen interest in you know, academy football and youth football, and so I really do see this as being a big push, a big priority for Newcastle over the next few years. There's some fantastic players in the region. You know, I still watch quite a bit of junior football when I can, you know, with some of the links with grassroots stuff that I have, and you know, you see some great players. Unfortunately, like I say, you see some who have to go elsewhere to try and get a game or try to get a contract with clubs. But I'm sure that it'll be on Newcastle's radar in terms of hooking in with some of the big boys clubs around the country.
Yeah, Newcastle also been linked with Cliftonville winger Sean Moore this month, another 17-year-old player. So yeah, it's good to see. But let's hope that they do, choose to look at the likes of Wallsend Boys Club and Red Youth in particular, just to to get in and tap into these places, because they're a wonderful source of young footballer. And there's been some huge success stories over the last few decades from those particular places. It'd be well worth it. A couple of the names that the Chronicle have linked Newcastle with this week are the Dutch international Memphis Depay. Again, it's another forward player that Newcastle have been linked with. Barcelona apparently are linked into an open, like a loan move. Sorry. And the other line that the Chronicle have been pushing this week is Nicolas Gonzalez. Basically that said that there's been a video call between Newcastle and the players' representatives. This was broken on Twitter, Mercato Web. Again, it's another forward. I just wonder, with the links to forwards, I think that was maybe something Newcastle were looking at. But again, they'll be very, very, eyes will be being cast on the treatment room and what the news is on Bruno before they make any decisions on these players. There just seems to be a lot more noise coming out as we get to the halfway stage in the transfer window.
Yeah, I think we've said it before, haven't we, Steve, that it's something that is going to evolve, and what the targets and the priorities potentially were in December, or even at the start of January, maybe it's on the priorities and targets now, because the needs of the squad have to be assessed, and that's one of the reasons why business wouldn't have been done really, really early in the window, because Newcastle didn't know what they would necessarily need by the time they reached the end. They could have gone out and spent all their budget on a centre forward at the start of January, for example, and then all of a sudden a couple of injuries and you need a centre midfielder. So I think it will be something that will be evolving. They do. They've got a scouting network like everybody else. They've got a really strong scouting network and will be watching and monitoring a number of players in different positions in case Callum Wilson breaks his leg or Alexander Isak has a setback or whatever, and then all of a sudden they think, right, we might need another forward here. So they're going to keep a lot of plates spinning and keep watching a lot of players. But I think it's fairly obvious now that where the needs for the team are, and that is predominantly in that midfield area. And I think that's where if Isak had a setback and hadn't come back, then maybe they would have looked at something a bit more forward play. But when you've got Callum Wilson, Alexander Isak, Chris Woods, Miggy Almiron, Jacob Murphy, Alan St. Maximin, you've got a lot of forward players there. Do they need another one to play across that front line at this point in time between now and the end of the season? I don't think so. I don't think that's where the priorities lie. The priorities lie in the centre of the park, and that's, I think, where where they'll look to strengthen between now and the end of the window.
Yeah, I agree. We'll wait and see. Obviously, you know what happens there. We didn't really talk about the semi-final at the start of the program, but Southampton is the team that we've been drawn against, and we've got the away leg first, which is important.
It is. I think that's really important to if they can come back to St James's Park either with a lead or you know level after the first leg. I think it all sets it up for a really strong atmosphere. You know, to have that atmosphere at St James's Park for the second leg when it could be a one-off knockout game. It's really important. We've seen how strong the atmosphere and the fan bases have been at previous games. You know, the Leicester game was rousing before kick-off, obviously with the flags and the noise that was created and generated. It was and Newcastle came absolutely storming out the blocks there and should have been ahead in the first 10-15 minutes, if not a couple of goals ahead. Well, within the first minute, really, if you count Sean Longstaff's miss after about a minute or so. So I think the home atmosphere at St James's Park in the second leg, it could be incredible. It could be one of the best atmospheres that people have experienced at St James's Park, because you've got to go back. If you think you've got to go back to what 2003 since the last time, or 2004 since Newcastle hosted a semi-final at St James's Park which was the UEFA Cup game against Marseille, which was a two-legged affair as well. So that's the last time there's been a semi-final. Newcastle hosted a semi-final at St James's Park. That's, you know, you're coming up to 20 years. Not a lot of people will remember that. Not everybody will have experienced that. So be great to have it under the lights, one-off game, hopefully, in an incredible atmosphere to cheer the lads, hopefully through to Wembley.
I heard a few people at the match at the weekend saying that they would have preferred to have Manchester United over two legs and have Manchester United away first. I mean, did that cross your mind when you were looking at the draw?
No, not at all. Not at all. When I looked at the draw, and obviously you'd seen that Southampton, it produced a hell of a shock to beat Man City. I don't think anybody really would have predicted that. I would have loved to have had a tenner on that before kick-off. I think why would you play Man United now? Why would you play them in a semi-final? I think you would hope, you know, let's hope that Nottingham Forest can do a job on Man United over two legs. I would take I just want to get to Wembley, get through this stage, get through the next stage, and get into Wembley, and then we'll see what comes then. But no, I didn't want to play Man United at this stage. And Man United, to be fair, have really, really improved under Ten Hag in recent weeks and months. You know, they're on a great run. They're banging form. They're disciplined. They're organised. They've got pace. They've got players who have regained their sharpness and their confidence. We've got a manager who's instilled his way of playing, but also his discipline on the team. They are a completely different outfit. To even going back to when Newcastle played at Old Trafford a little while back and got that 0-0 draw, they were a completely different outfit. Now they're a dangerous team. So yeah, I'd avoid them at all costs in the semi-final if I'd had my wish, and thankfully for my side of things, that we play Southampton instead.
Just off topic, I guess, but just, with the game at the weekend, Manchester United's goal that stood where Rashford got in the way of Fernandes, basically interfering with play, should have been offside, I think, for most of us. I mean, this offside rule used to be very simple, Ross. It's getting more and more complicated.
Oh, it's nonsense, isn't it? That was just an absolute nonsense decision. How you can say that just because he hasn't touched the ball, he's not interfering with play. He runs pretty much up to the ball. He's just about to strike it himself, and he leaves it to Fernandes. You look at the positioning of the two Man City defenders, and their positioning is all dependent on thinking, well, Rashford's is running onto this, so we know he's offside. Otherwise, they would have just gone for the ball. There's a good clip on there I saw on social media somewhere of there's a still of that bit of play, and somebody's photoshopped out Rashford, and the ball's about 2 yards away from Akanji, 5 yards away from Kyle Walker. Bruno Fernandes isn't even in the picture. So if Rashford hadn't been there, they would have just cleared that ball. They would have taken responsibility. It was just absolute madness. But you're right. By the letter of the law, by the actual letter of the law, then it was arguably the right decision, I suppose. If and you can see, I can't see why it was given. But you've got a really top class linesman there, assistant referee Darren Kahn, who's one of the best in the world, never mind in the Premier League, and he initially flagged it as offside. You've got a really strong, good. I think it was Michael Oliver was on fourth official duty or VAR duty, and
he was,
and he had to, and it, like I said, by the actual letter of the law, it was probably right, but it's just the laws, the rules are nonsense. It needs to be rewritten. It needs to be simplified. There's the old saying, isn't it? If you're not interfering with play, what you're doing on the pitch, sort of thing. So yeah, it was a shocking decision, but there we go.
Yeah, absolutely bonkers, mate. I mean, after a bit of the show there, we've dedicated the offside rule doesn't make sense, and VARs are nonsense as well. So definitely things to be improved for next season.
Gives us something to talk about, though, doesn't it? Gives us something to talk about.
Of course it does. Don't forget, meet and greet with Warren Barton is coming up Friday, January the 27th. He's here for a couple of nights. He's decided he's going to do an event at the Irish Centre for the food bank. Tickets are a tenner, and you can book them at NUFCmatters.com. All proceeds are going to the food bank. You'll be doing a small Q&A, a little bit of a meet and greet, and sign anything that anybody brings. So feel free to get yourself along to that. Nobby Solano, of course, is back in the Northeast as well. Saturday, the 25th of March, there's an event at the Irish Centre. Tickets are £15, and you can book those at NUFCmatters.com. Just look for shop on NUFCmatters.com, and you will be able to buy your tickets today. Ross, as always, been a pleasure. I'm back on Wednesday with the transfer show with Ben Jacobs answering your questions. Ross, take care, mate. See you next week.
Cheers, Steve.